The year is 1945. Gimbel's department store, New York. Hundreds of people are trampling each other, desperate to buy the hottest new technology on the planet. It's not a car, it's not a television, it's a pen. A single ballpoint pen, selling for the equivalent of over $200 today. So how did we get from that to this? A humble plastic stick that you can buy for less than $1. The answer is a story of genius, failure, and a ruthless French baron who killed a 200-year-old empire by making writing cheap. This is Mundane Marvels, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. And today we're asking, why are Bic pens so famous, and how did a $1 pen destroy an empire? Okay, so here's the thing. To understand why the Bic pen matters, we need to talk about what writing was like before it existed. And trust me, it was a mess. For most of history, if you wanted to write something down, you needed a fountain pen. And fountain pens were not cheap. We're talking gold, silver, fancy materials. These things were basically jewelry that could write. Only rich people could afford them. And even if you had the money to buy one, actually using it was a total nightmare. Picture this. You're trying to write a letter. Your fountain pen leaks ink all over your hand. Now your shirt has a stain. The paper's ruined. And if you press down too hard, the metal nib would just snap. Oh, and good luck taking one on an airplane. The pressure changes would make them explode in your pocket like a tiny ink bomb. Writing wasn't something you could just do casually. It was this careful, stressful process. But people needed to write. Students had to take notes. Workers had to fill out forms. So they dealt with it. They paid crazy prices for fountain pens and bought bottles of ink and replacement parts when things broke. Companies like Parker, Waterman, and Schaefer made millions off this system. They'd built a 200-year-old empire selling expensive pens that were complicated to use. And they had no reason to change anything because, well, what else were people going to do? Not write? But then this Hungarian journalist shows up and everything changes. His name was László Bíró. He lived in Buenos Aires in the 1930s and worked at a newspaper. And every day, he'd watch the printing presses do their thing. The ink they used dried instantly. No smudging. Perfect. But then he'd try to write with his fountain pen, and the ink would smear everywhere and take forever to dry. One day, he's watching his kids play outside. They're rolling marbles through a puddle, and the marbles pick up water and leave a trail behind them. And something clicks in his brain. What if you put a tiny ball at the tip of a pen? As you write, the ball rolls around, picks up ink from inside the pen, and puts it on the paper, just like a marble rolling through water. So he builds one. His brother Georgi was a chemist, so together they create the first ballpoint pen in 1938. They called it the Biro. And it actually worked. No leaking. Ink dried right away. You could write upside down if you wanted. It was incredible. But here's where things get tricky. Making these pens was really hard. The ball had to be perfectly round. Like perfectly. And the ink had to be exactly the right thickness. Too thick and it wouldn't flow. Too thin and it would leak everywhere. The Biro brothers could make them, sure, but they couldn't make them cheap. So the ballpoint pen became this luxury thing. During World War II, the British Royal Air Force bought them for their pilots because, unlike fountain pens, they actually worked at high altitudes. But get this, they cost $50 each. In 1940s money. Do the math on that, and you're looking at over $700 today. For one pen. You could almost buy a decent used car for that now. After the war, American companies jumped on the ballpoint pen train. They marketed them like they were magic. Gimbel's in New York sold them for $12.50. People literally lined up around the block to buy them. On the first day alone, Gimbel's sold 10,000 pens in 6 hours. The hype was real. But then reality hit. These early ballpoint pens were garbage. They skipped. They blobbed ink everywhere. They'd just stopped working for no reason. People spent their hard-earned money on what they thought was the future of writing and got a pen that barely worked better than the fountain pen they already hated. By the late 1940s, the ballpoint pen had a reputation as a scam. Sales tanked. The whole thing should have died right there. But then this French guy named Marcel Bich shows up and sees an opportunity. Marcel Bich made parts for fountain pens and mechanical pencils near Paris. He watched the whole ballpoint pen disaster unfold, and while everyone else saw failure, he saw potential. The ballpoint pen didn't fail because it was a bad idea. It failed because it was too expensive and too complicated. So he asked himself a question. What if you made a ballpoint pen that was dead simple? Like, so simple it only had a few parts. And what if you made millions of them? Mass production. Drive the cost down so low that literally anyone could afford one. In 1950, he got to work. He spent months testing different inks, different ball sizes, different materials. He wanted a pen that would never leak, never skip, and write for miles. And he wanted to make it for pennies. By 1952, he nailed it. The Bic Cristal. Clear plastic tube, tiny tungsten carbide ball, simple cap. That's it. No fancy features. No complicated parts. Just a pen that worked perfectly every single time. And here's the brilliant part. Marcel Bich didn't try to sell it as some premium product. He did the exact opposite. He made it as cheap as humanly possible. When the Bic Cristal launched, it cost less than 50 cents. In some places, 19 cents. Think about that. A pen that actually worked for less than the price of a candy bar. People lost their minds. Students bought them. Offices bought them in bulk. Everyone bought them. The Bic Cristal became the pen. But Marcel Bich understood something really smart about how people behave. People lose pens. All the time. You put one in your pocket, and 20 minutes later it's gone. Vanished into the void. So he made his pens so cheap that losing one didn't even matter. You could buy a handful and not think twice about it. This was huge. For the first time ever, writing was disposable. You didn't have to baby your pen anymore. You didn't have to keep track of it like it was some precious family heirloom. It was just a pen. Use it. Lose it. Buy another one. No big deal. The fountain pen companies freaked out. Parker, Waterman, all of them. They'd built their entire business on selling expensive pens that you'd keep for life and pass down to your kids. Now, people were buying pens they'd toss in the trash after a few weeks. They tried to fight back. They made their own cheap ballpoint pens. They ran ads saying fountain pens were more classy, more sophisticated. But nobody cared. Why would you pay $100 for a fountain pen that leaked when you could get a Bic that worked for 20 cents? By the 1960s, fountain pen sales had collapsed. Parker laid off thousands of workers. Waterman almost went bankrupt. The empire was crumbling, and Bic just kept growing. In 1958, Marcel Bich brought his pens to America. And here's a power move for you. He bought the Waterman Pen Company. Not because he wanted their fountain pens. He wanted their distribution network. Then he shut down their fountain pen operations. Brutal. By the 1960s, Bic was selling millions of pens every single day. Let's talk numbers for a second, because they're kind of insane. Since 1950, Bic has sold over 100 billion pens. 100 billion. If you lined them up end to end, they'd wrap around the earth more than 50 times. The Bic Cristal is in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. They put it in a museum. It's considered one of the greatest designs of the 20th century. And you know what's crazy? The design hasn't changed. If you buy a Bic Cristal today, it looks almost exactly like it did in 1952. Same clear plastic, same hexagonal shape, same blue cap. Because when something works this well, you don't mess with it. So, why are Bic pens so famous? Because they took something complicated and expensive and made it simple and cheap. The Bic pen democratized writing, but it also became part of our culture in ways you might not even realize. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you know the Bic pen was the only tool that could perfectly wind your favorite mixtape. That specific diameter fit into cassette spools like it was designed for it. Every kid knew this trick, it was universal knowledge. But in making writing easy and accessible, something was lost. Cursive handwriting. You know that fancy flowing script your grandparents used? It was born from the continuous motion of a fountain pen. But with ballpoint pens, you didn't need that smooth flow anymore. So schools slowly stopped teaching it. The pen that made writing accessible for everyone also kind of killed the art of it. There's something bittersweet about that. The Bic pen also changed how we think about products in general. Marcel Bich proved you don't need complexity to win. Sometimes the best product is the simplest one, the one that just works without any drama. This idea spread everywhere. Cars, electronics, software. Keep it simple. Make it reliable. Don't overthink it. And then there's the business model. Disposable consumer goods. Make something cheap. Make it work well. Sell billions of them. This didn't really exist before Bic. Now it's everywhere. Razors, lighters, plastic cups, paper plates. All of it traces back to what Marcel Bich figured out with his pen. Today, Bic is huge. They make lighters, shavers, even surfboards. But the pen is still what they're known for. Every single second, Bic sells 57 pens somewhere in the world. That's over 4 million pens every day. The numbers are just bonkers. So the next time you grab a Bic pen, maybe give it a second look. Because it's not just some cheap plastic stick. It's the thing that killed a 200-year-old empire. It's the tool that made writing something everyone could do without thinking twice. It changed the world. And it only cost $1. That was the pen. Next time, maybe we'll talk about the zipper, or the humble traffic light. The list is endless. If you want to be here for that story, subscribe and join your fellow curious minds.